Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I've got a total of 10 fantasy football wide receivers for Week 5 NFL action that I'm either going to be starting or sitting here for this week's games. I'll be breaking down each scenario in today's episode, and if you want to go check out the individual players you've got on your team, head down into the description of today's video and check out the timestamps, and from there you can navigate through which players you've got on your own respective rosters and then make this a more efficient style production for your individual team and make that a little bit more of a personalized experience. Additionally, if you've got any questions for me regarding your lineups, drop them down in the comment section below and I will get back to as many of you as possible. I always try and make it a priority to respond to as many of you as I can before getting on to the next day's video, and hoping that I can help as many of you as possible get the wins in your weekly matchups. So with that being said, drop down and give today's video a like and click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Without further ado, let's hit that intro and get in to our first wide receiver for Week 5. Another great resource to take advantage of here on the SFS channel is something called SFS Gold, which is our exclusive monthly membership that we have on our website. The link to that is in the description of today's video, and it's just over $1 a week for an entire month of fantasy action. You'll get our weekly positional rankings to quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defenses. Again, that's each and every single week. You'll get a fresh list of rankings for those week's games with matchups, health, and all that great stuff taken into consideration. And additionally, you will get exclusive membership privileges on our community Discord server, which is free to join. But if you become an SFS Gold member, I'll add you as a friend, and you'll have access to my personal DMs where I will answer any of your fantasy questions for you and help set your lineups for you on a weekly basis. With that being said, our first name up on the block here is Laviska Shenualt. The Jaguars taking on the Titans this week. I am going to be starting Laviska Shenualt here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. DJ Chark on the injured reserve, likely out for the season. This means more wealth to be spread around to Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenualt. I'll go out there as well and say, in addition to Laviska Shenualt, I am starting Marvin Jones this week as well. There's, again, more food for these boys to be eaten up in that passing game, and Laviska Shenualt being the player who is seeing the higher amount of volume. Now, in certain weeks so far this season, he hasn't necessarily been the most efficient or productive with the looks he's getting, but he's getting the opportunity to catch passes short and get a lot of run after a catch, which I think is an underrated usage for a fantasy player. At some point, the ceiling isn't all there from just those looks and opportunities, but what it does do for us is establish a very strong and steady floor. Shenualt caught 6 of his 7 passes for 99 yards versus the Cincinnati Bengals last week, and dang near had a touchdown reception, but was just knocked down short of the goal line. Again, going back to the situation, more targets to go around in this offense with DJ Chark being removed from things. I think this bodes very well for Marvin Jones as well, who is going to be that deep passing threat and the player who I think that Trevor Lawrence has a lot of confidence in when throwing the ball downfield. I like both of these players. If Laviska can continue to do what he did last week, and that's hit deep balls over the top, he caught his longest reception of the season last week. This is a situation I like more and more building here, and for a bad football team that's going to need to pass the football, they're going to need to throw it around, try and stay in games late. Laviska can certainly help his young quarterback do that. Emmanuel Sanders, the Bills taking on the Chiefs. Again, I'm going to start Emmanuel Sanders this week. I think this is going to be a high-scoring matchup. You've got 2 of the premier young quarterbacks in the National Football League, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, in primetime spotlight. I think there's going to be points flying all over the board. And for Stephon Diggs, who's the number 1 option in this offense, that's where the most of the attention is going to be. Emmanuel Sanders has been very sneaky, very under the radar, and very productive each of the last 2 weeks. I think he comes out here, has the opportunity to maybe find the end zone, in addition to tacking on to that nice performance in the yardage department that I think will do very well for his production in this week's games. I'm loving E-Man this week. I think that Sanders could come out here and be one of the surprise lineup choices that ends up winning a lot of fantasy weeks, as he is a player who I think has great upside. Additionally, just like that Laviska Shenualt situation, where I also love Marvin Jones, I like me some Cole Beasley this week because I think in the slot he can do a lot of damage, and in PPR leagues, that's someone else I love to have in my lineups. Brandin Cooks now. I am going to sit Brandin Cooks for the second straight week versus the New England Patriots. It killed me to put him on the sit list last week after he had been so productive and was amongst the top 5 in the National Football League in the receiving yardage department. But man, I mean, that was a tough matchup against Tre'Davious White. It showed. Brandin Cooks was underwhelming. His production wasn't all there. Coming out against New England, this has more to do with Bill Belichick, who is just going to decapitate Davis Mills, more so than it does have to do with Brandin Cooks getting shut out by a J.C. Jackson level player. This is a mind-boggling stat for me. Davis Mills had -5 fantasy points against the Bills defense last week. That is insane. So for a player who had under 100 passing yards, 4 interceptions, and no touchdowns, he had -5 fantasy points against a well-coached defensive, very sound unit. But this isn't Bill Belichick and the Patriots. He will crush Davis Mills. He crushed Justin Herbert last year. I predicted it this year, and he crushed Zach Wilson. He's been doing this for decades. He's going to come out here, make life a living nightmare for Davis Mills, and that's just going to trickle down to his wide receivers around him. You don't want Brandin Cooks in your lineup this week because he's going to be a product of his situation. This is something I say all the time here on the channel. You are ultimately what your football environment gives you, and this week it's not going to be good quarterback play. Brandin Cooks is going to be incredibly dependent on a huge splash touchdown play to get his quality production this week. Devonta Smith against the Carolina Panthers, one of the fastest young defenses in the National Football League. I'm going to sit Devonta Smith here against the Panthers. Back-to-back starts, then back-to-back sits for the top of today's episode. Even without young star cornerback J.C. Horn, I still think this is a tough ask for Devonta Smith to be productive here. Now, he was very, very good against the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 4, and he ended out the month of September with a 50% ratio of either meeting his floor or missing it. In Week 1, he was great, met his floor, and in Week 4 against the Chiefs, he met his floor, but he didn't do so in the weeks in between. So we've still got a little bit of a consistency problem here. There's some growing pains going on in this Eagles offense, and against a tougher defensive matchup, I just don't trust him here. The pass rush for the Carolina Panthers is underrated, and they're going to be able to get after Jalen Hurts, who, although is athletic, doesn't really have the pure arm talent to make plays downfield when he gets outside the pocket, as he has a little bit of reckless tendencies and is a little bit inaccurate with the ball when shooting it down the field. So, staying away from Devonta Smith this week. I think that long-term, though, this season, he will continue to be a strong lineup play. A.J. Green. Now, we've got the Cardinals taking on the San Francisco 49ers this week. This is a banged-up 49ers secondary. They didn't concede as much yardage and production to the Seahawks pass catchers last week as I expected them to, but I'm going to start A.J. Green this week against that 49ers defense. We've seen DeAndre Hopkins be the focal point of defensive game planning and scheming, but it's been those helping pieces that have really stepped up here and helped Kyler Murray dominate to start this season. A.J. Green in his last 3 games has 11.5 or more fantasy points in half PPR scoring each of those 3 performances. So clearly a player who's trending up right now. Again, that 49ers back end is pretty banged up. You've got yourself a nice opportunity here this week with Green. Chase Claypool. Now, I'm going to be sitting Chase Claypool against Denver. This is a team with really solid boundary corners, and he's coming off a hamstring injury. Wide receivers coming off hamstring injuries tend to not be able to cut as sharply, and they tend to not have as much explosive capabilities as obviously they would have if they were in 100% health and ready to go out there and play. Chase Claypool, give him a grace period of a week here. I'm also not loving this Pittsburgh passing game outside of Deontay Johnson because he does thrive in those short passes where he catches the ball near the line of scrimmage and gets work done after the catch. He has really molded himself into a top fantasy option and a top NFL option at the wide receiver position. Slowly and slowly, Chase Claypool's been trending down with that red downward arrow for me over the last month of the beginning of this season. I'm a little bit worried because of Big Ben's play and because of Chase Claypool's play style just not meshing at this point in time. I'm staying away from Chase and giving him a week to figure things out here. Jaylen Waddle versus Tampa Bay. Now, this is one I think is really sneaky because a lot of players aren't going to want anything to do with Miami players against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. What I see here is a screaming opportunity for production. What is the one thing that they got to make sure in Miami that they get away from? What's the strength of this Tampa Bay defense? it is the pass rush. And that pass rush can make up for them having a weak back end because they don't give you the time to shoot the ball downfield and to pass it deep like you might initially think that Jaylen Waddle would be used for in this matchup. And they get after the passer and make it so you can't sit back and do 5-step drops in the pocket. But Jaylen Waddle over the first month of the season has been used excessively in the quick ball game just to get it out into the flats, let Jaylen Waddle catch the football, and get his damage done with run after the catch. Waddle is going to be heavily targeted in this game. Will Fuller has a broken finger. He might miss some time here, so you're talking about having one less offensive piece to take opportunities away from Waddle. And again, you're getting someone involved in the quick passing game here that's going to be able to do a lot of stuff after the catch and be a very dynamic and explosive playmaker here. He might even spring one and put together a really nice yardage performance. So even if Jaylen doesn't go downfield and score a 60-yard bomb over the top of the defense, he can still get the job done, especially in PPR leagues. We've seen him have over 12 targets in a game this season. He could get back to those numbers here in Week 5 and put up really, really strong numbers for the Dolphins. Ceedee Lamb. Now, this is somebody I'm going to sit this week, and a lot of players might not have the option, so I'm going to go and spin this more towards I am going to warn you about the production or lack thereof that Ceedee Lamb might have this week. The Dallas Cowboys are not incapable of passing the football. That could not be farther from the truth. This team has a variety of weapons ranging all over the field that they could pass the ball to at will if they'd like to. But their run game has been so dominant that they do not have to. And ultimately, if you're going to win football games and be an efficient team, you are going to run the football and then use that run game to throw off of. And that's what Dallas has done so far. They have been very, very sound offensively, and they haven't had to just chuck it all over the field like we expected them to do because we thought they'd be making up for having a really terrible defense, to be honest. That's not been the case. Ceedee Lamb has 8 targets total in his last 2 games combined, which he's turned into 5 receptions. This just isn't enough volume to get elite numbers. Now, he is certainly talented and capable of going out there and scoring on these plays, making big-time catches. But when the work isn't there, it makes it a lot more dicey and a lot more risky that you are not going to ultimately find your end result and reach your fantasy goals. So, given the fact that the Giants are the 26th ranked unit against the run and against the fantasy football running back, that's a red flag. You've got Thunder and Lightning, Ezekiel Elliott, and Tony Pollard back there. They might have themselves a very, very loud game against this Giants defense. And if that's the case, if they dictate the line of scrimmage, if they push the Giants out of their way, Dallas ain't going to be throwing the ball that much. They're not going to be airing it out downfield. And Ceedee Lamb or Amari Cooper, one or the other, easily could have a very quiet game here in Week 5. Henry Ruggs, I am going to start him against the Chicago Bears defense this week. Ruggs has been getting targeted more and more in this Las Vegas passing game, and I think that speaks a lot to his development as an overall player and the potential usage he could have going forward. But with that being said, what is the weakness of this Bears defense, and what is the strength of Henry Ruggs? Deep passing game. The Bears have given up a lot of plays over the top to start this season, and Henry Ruggs is that guy for this Raiders offense. Now, simple patchwork and smart intellectual defensive play calling will play a soft defensive coverage where they don't let Henry Ruggs get free in the secondary. But when the Raiders start running the football, once they start having a balanced attack here and trying to get back to the basics and the fundamentals of their offense, they are going to be able to lull teams to sleep. They've had, especially in the first half against the Chargers, a really, really poor outing and down week offensively. But prior to that point, they were one of the best offenses in the National Football League. I don't want to say that game against the Chargers was a fluke because I think it was very telling as to some of the limitations they have offensively, but this is still a team that got it done for 3 of the 4 weeks in the month of September, so I'm not writing them off yet. Again, I think Henry Ruggs' strength plays to the weakness of this Bears defense, and Henry should come out here, be able to hit one home run ball over the top, and if he can just do that, he will be a productive play in the flex for lineups this week. And then finally here, DK Metcalf taking on the Los Angeles Rams. Now, this is clearly the biggest name on the list in today's video, the most upper echelon, high caliber player that we've got. I'm not going to all out go out here and say he is a must-sit player, but in the realm and in the spectrum of stardom or sit-em, DK leans a lot heavier in the side of sit-em this week. Jalen Ramsey has done a number on him in the production department the last season. So 2 matchups against the Rams, because the Seahawks play the Rams twice a year. Obviously an intra-division play. DK's been quiet. And it hasn't even been because he can't separate. It hasn't even been because he can't get open against Jalen Ramsey. It's that Russell Wilson does not even look to him to throw the football when Ramsey's in coverage. So this could have somewhat of an impact. You could argue and spin things to the side that, if Jalen Ramsey is shadowing DK Metcalf, maybe this means increased production for Tyler Lockett, as now he has the easier cornerback matchup. Fair. That might be the case. All I'm saying is beware of the fact that one of the best corners in the National Football League, Jalen Ramsey, will be in press coverage playing shadow cornerback defense against DK Metcalf. And at the end of the day, the separation isn't going to be all that huge, and DK's going to have to go up there and win these routes at the point of attack and catch the football with a guy plastered all over him. So DK's probably a lower end wide receiver 2 play for me this week. He's more likely than not going to find his way into your lineups, but just be aware there is risk attached to him, and he could potentially have a lower floor than we want to admit. Alrighty, those were my stardom and situm wide receivers for Week 5 fantasy football action. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop down and give it a like and click that subscribe button. Turn that bell on as well so you're never late for an episode. And go check out some of the other videos I put up for Week 5 fantasy football advice. With that being said, I'll see you guys later, and make sure to drop your questions down in the comment section below. I think I mentioned that earlier on in the video, but I want to make sure that if you guys have got questions, I get back to you and can answer you if I got the time. Alrighty, those are my stardom, situm, wide receivers for Week 5 fantasy football action. 10 names, 5 starts, 5 sits, or players I'm cautioning myself towards this week. Let me know down in the comment section below again if you've got any questions today, and I'll get back to as many of you as possible. And go check out some of my other fancy episodes with advice for Week 5 action, whether it's trades, lineup advice, waiver wire targets, whatever the case might be. We've got a lot of stuff out there already for you to take advantage of. So click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Give today's video a like before you head out, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.